Well, they've been bracing for this since they were planning this announcement. I think a lot of people in GM thought that the president would have tweeted Monday, and I think initially the company thought, well, in response to questions from reporters, President Trump did criticize the company somewhat on Monday, but clearly he ramped up the rhetoric on Tuesday, with this subsidy threat, although I think that's largely symbolic given he can't take away those $7,500 tax credits that GM is getting for electric vehicles. Those are going to phase out soon anyway because GM is near the cap. But this clearly caught GM by surprise, at least the intensity of the reaction, given that other announcements, when GM announced it was going to build the Chevy Blazer in Mexico, President Trump stayed silent.
Is there any vehicle that you could imagine? Is there any vehicle that they have that you could imagine could get repurposed into one of these facilities in some kind of agreement or cooperative something so that President Trump will be happy and Mary Barra will be happy? Because also the UAW is going to have to approve this too.
That's right, and this is certainly going to be part of the UAW talks next summer over a new contract. And I think with Lordstown it's difficult because that's an older plant that was designed for smaller cars, and so to build a new SUV you'd have to spend a lot of money to retool the paint shop and retool the factory. Now, you could certainly see something going in Detroit Hamtramck. Potentially, they have other facilities in Ohio that they could add investments to, add jobs. But it's really not over. These plants are moving to a no production status. Right. Other plants, have reopened years later. So no, this is not going to end until the end of the next year. And I think there will be a lot of pressure for GM.
What kind of reception is Mary Barra getting from others in Washington? I imagine they have their lobbying groups in full effect right now. But I'm surprised that they're not trying to move on other Republicans and conservatives to actually speak out against the president, which is to say this is about as anti-free market, some of the comments that he's been making, as you could possibly imagine. Historically, you would have been hearing from people on that side of the aisle.
No, you're right. But, given GM is playing a tough hand now, right? Mary Barra just announced very tough job cuts a month before Christmas, right? Up to 15,000 jobs and 8,000 salaried jobs being cut. And I agree, normally Republicans would be out probably defending the company. And I do think you'll see more of that going forward.
You've seen Democrats, David, already come out and back the president on it, especially
Senator Rob Portman's going to be on our show in just a little bit.
Well, he's a Republican, but Sherrod Brown, other people in Ohio, right, in Ohio and Michigan and Maryland. I figure you'll have all the usual suspects with their, whatever it is.
But you're not going to get Republicans backing him, backing the plant, because Portman is furious about the jobs and the frustration.
I'm sure he is too. Yeah.
No, and all the Republicans or all the Democrats are making this sort of the message of the tax cuts didn't work. Elizabeth Warren, everybody's using this as the whipping boy.
Right. I saw Schumer yesterday.
Why didn't GM understand that? it seemed like a fairly
weird timing. Yeah.
Obvious. You do this right before Christmas. You do it in a very sensitive election state where the president was campaigning and where he won. You do it right in the same year that you've gotten these massive corporate cuts. I understand it from the business perspective, wanting to manage your business, but understanding the political blowback, it seemed like it would be fairly easy to read the tea leaves.
No, I think before this, the expectation was GM was going to wait, let some of these plants run out until after the election. This would be discussed during the UAW talks, but they wouldn't ultimately decide till after the election. Obviously, Mary Barra and GM looked at the numbers. They see these small car sales, imploding, and they're going to take the heat, and to save $6 billion in costs.
David, what's your sense that this is idiosyncratic to GM, meaning these are vehicles and plants that just don't work for GM? And what do you think? Or do you think there's something much larger to be said, because there's a lot of economists and others looking at this saying, okay, Mary Barra is making a call not just on her own vehicles, on these specific individual vehicles, but on the larger economy. And what does it say about other automakers? What does it say about the strength of the economy?
No, I do think it shows that there's a lot of worry about the state of U.S. auto sales. They're either flattening or potentially going to decline next year. And with rising interest rates, there's big concerns. At the same time, companies are going to use this angst to shift more resources toward electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles and move away from these low-selling cars.
We got to run, but what are you hearing from other automakers in the wake of the GM announcement? Is there anybody saying, okay, we're going to draft right behind Mary Barra now, and we won't take the heat?
Well, certainly Ford is the one coming next with some sort of restructuring, some additional cost savings by early next year. I don't think it'll be necessarily as big as this, but certainly you can anticipate more.
Is there a lesson for them to be learned, though, about how to deal with the politics of the moment related to this then?
I mean, I think it's hard. I mean, Mary Barr's initial plan was to go to the White House Monday, inform them in person, and then, do it Tuesday. But I mean, it's hard to do that well. I mean, given the bad medicine of 5 plant closures.